Alright, so we're moving on to the 26th problem in the Grand 75. We're finally moving on to mediums, so let's see how much harder they really are. We're also done with week 2, so that's nice. This one is called Insert Interval, and we're given 25 minutes, so we're going to start the countdown now. Okay. You are given an array of non-overlapping intervals where intervals I is equal to start index and end index. That represents the start and the end of the ith interval, and intervals is sorted in ascending order by start I. You are also given an interval new interval, which is equal to start, comma, end. That represents the start and end of another interval. Insert new interval into intervals such that intervals is sorted in ascending order by start, and intervals still does not have any overlapping intervals. Merge overlapping intervals if necessary. Okay. I'm actually going to make note of that. Merge overlapping intervals if necessary. Return intervals after the insertion. Okay. So I think I've seen a problem somewhat similar to this. So we have intervals 1 through 3 and 6 through 9. So 2 through 5 inserts into here. So notice how 2 through 5 sort of dips into right here. So then the interval becomes 1 through 5, I guess. So let's see. Okay, and we're only given one new interval, but is it possible that intervals will start off by overlapping? No. They will start off non-overlapping. So we just have to merge them once we add our new value. So given non-overlapping array. Okay, so let's see. Given this example, we have 4 and 8. So 4 is going to dip down into here, and it's going to go up to here. So then what should happen? It should become 3 through 10. That's what it looks like. Because the new interval overlaps with 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. Okay. So let's just look at our constraints really quick. So our array, overarching array, could easily be of length 0. Each interval will always have a start and end, or will have a length of 2. Start could be the very first index, and end could be a very large one. Sorted in ascending order. New interval length is equal to 2. And this is like pretty much the same thing as here, but I believe that refers to new interval. Okay, so how do we find which intervals inside of intervals does new interval overlap with? So let's see. I mean, I don't know if this is how we would want to do it, but this is just the first thing that comes to mind. New interval. Make set of all values between start and end of new interval. And let's see, we can just iterate through intervals. Iterate through intervals if So it's possible that it could be inside of an interval too. So I don't think we have to make a set actually. I think we can just do comparisons, as in, so we have the first interval, we have its start. We have its start and its end. Okay. We want to know if new intervals start and end overlap with it somehow. So there's 4 cases, it seems like. So new interval can be in between 1 and 2. It can go on either side of 1 and 2. It can split 1 and 2 on the first value and split 1 and 2 on the second value. I think that's pretty much all the cases. So I mean, I'll just write that down. So in between, maybe swallow, and then split first val, split second val. Okay. So we just need to think about when we need to do the comparison operators. And then also return intervals after the insertion. So we are going to destructively modify. Okay. So let's say we're going through intervals. What would we compare against 4 and 8 first? So I guess the first check would be if i's end so maybe if intervals, which I'll just write up here because we're going to have something similar to this. So if, let's see, I'm just going to say for interval in intervals, so the first check would be if interval's end is less than new interval start, new interval 0th index, well, then we don't even have to worry about it. So, I mean, we should look for cases in which we do have to worry about it. Okay, so then let's actually go over the 4 cases. So, actually, if end was we have 4 cases, but what is the most efficient way to check them using if statements? So I'm going to write the if statements out first really quick, just so I can see them. So let's say it's in between. So that would mean intervals 0 is less than new interval 0 and interval 1 is greater than new interval 1. Okay, I'm already sort of seeing how we might be able to condense this. So that's in between. Split would be, so let me just mark that really quick. This is in new interval is in between. This one is going to be new interval. I'm just going to do if statements for now. I'm not going to worry about nesting them properly. So new interval is new interval swallows. That's unfortunately how I'm going to describe it. So if interval's 0th index is actually greater than new interval's 0th index, so it seems to be the reverse of this, and then interval's new interval okay, and then we have, let's say, yeah, so basically it's just like it's just a flipping of these signs. So there's 4 possible permutations of these signs anyways, and we have to do 4 different actions. So maybe I will actually just write them all out like this. So I'm going to say new interval splits the first interval's 0th value. It's going to be like that. So we're going to say if intervals should be, yeah, if its 0th value is actually, in this case, it would be greater than new interval's 0th value, and but it's the case that interval's first value so this spells it out a little bit better, but so just really quickly, so structurally we could have 4 if statements, or we could do 2 overarching and then 2 under each if statement there. But for now, I'm just going to stick to the 4 overarching ones, just so we can clearly see what each if statement checks for. Okay, so again, if new interval splits the first one, then that means interval's 0th index will be greater than new interval's 0th index. However, interval's second index will also be greater than new interval's second index. And similarly, we should just have to flip the signs now. So I'm going to say less than and less than, just to make sure that makes sense. If new interval is splitting the current interval we are at its second element, then interval's first element should be less than new interval's first element, which it would be because new interval's first element would be in the middle. And interval's second element should also be less than new interval's second element, which would be over here. Okay, so now that we have the 4 cases, we need to figure out what to do for each of them. So let's see. We also have this integer array, so how would we delete values? It's a fixed length array too. We have to return intervals after the insertion. We have to return the original object we were given. So then how to decrease size of intervals, given that it's that. let's also just think about what we do at each case. So if it's in between, then there's actually nothing to do. So we don't even have to check for this really. I'll say don't have to check. If it swallows, then okay, let's see. Four and eight. Four and eight. So what is four and eight? So four and eight will swallow six and seven, but it's actually, so first off, it's going to split the second value of 3 and 5. So how does that get handled? It splits the second value of 3 and 5. Okay. So maybe we would update, we'd have to update something. Say we update 3's, we would update this interval's max to be 8, maybe. And then say we update this min and max to 4 and 8. But there's all this overlap. How do we account for it? Maybe we have some global variable that keeps track of the last point that we were on. And we will also, maybe we need some separate function called merge. So let's see. Private, I'm going to say that it's a void, and we're just going to call it merge. And we're going to pass in maybe 2 intervals. So let's just say int list A or int list A and int list B. Okay. So that's out there. And then if we also have a public, I mean, I will think of this kind of as a pointer, but what would be a more descript name for it? I mean, I think pointer works pretty well. So pointer can be initialized to something. Start can be 0, doesn't have to be 0. Let's just initialize it to nothing right now. Okay. So let's see how we would think about this now that we have a global pointer. So we get to this case right here, where we're splitting the second value in the array that we are iterating over. So say pointer becomes that second value. Let's say we merge. We'd have to do some kind of merge. Let's say we merge 4 and 8 with 3 and 5, and we set pointer equal to 8. Okay, so doing so would yield 3 and 8, and our pointer would also be 8. But then when you move on to 6 and 7, we see that our pointer is still 8. So at that point, At that point, we would not even really have to look at new interval. We could just look at the pointer. Let's see. I don't really know the proper way to merge them, though. Let's see. I probably should have written this out. That would have helped a bit, but we don't have much time. We have like 4 minutes left. Is pointer, do we even need pointer? So, okay, just we're going in. 4 and 8 are going to split 5. Say we merge them, and then we make 8 the pointer. Then we compare. Do we need the pointer, or can we just now compare it to I think we will need, so what are these called? I think we'll need an interval min, or interval start and interval end. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. As soon as we hit one of these conditions, I believe we're going to want to update our interval start and interval end values, because then we're going to merge we're going to eventually end up creating an array out of these values, and we're going to have to remove any value that we are touching, that we're overlapping with in intervals, if that makes sense. I believe that's a good way to do it. Overlaps with 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. Okay. So, basically what I would do is I would flag start and so update start and end appropriately, and then I would have to mark the values that overlapped with whatever start and end became, because then I would have to remove them and in their place put the new interval created by start and end. But that's not so easily done in Java. I'm sure there's some other structure that we use other than, we probably just use an array list of array lists. But again, we want to return the intervals object. Maybe we create an array list of array lists, and then at the very end, once it's made properly, we just set intervals equal to that converted into a fixed array like this. But yeah, so conceptually, I have an approach. I'm just not really sure how I would implement it. So we're also pretty much out of time, so I think I'm going to stop there.